Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I want to share with you my language learning habits that helped me to become fluent in English and that I still use to improve my other languages. If you're new here, my name is Anelia and I'm currently working on 3 languages, English, French and Turkish. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing I make sure I do is that I get enough exposure to the language I'm learning. For one, I've never lived in English or French-speaking country, so all my life I've had to recreate this English or French-speaking environment in order to immerse myself into the language. Now, you might ask, why is exposure so important? Exposure is something that helps your brain to pick up language patterns, natural phrasing, and expand a vocabulary, mostly passive vocabulary, but we'll talk about it later. It also helps you with oral comprehension, with listening, and just overall it makes you feel more comfortable with the language. One way I ensure this exposure is by consuming content in my target languages. And basically what I've done is I've minimized this exposure in my mother tongue in Russian, and instead I lean towards English or now French as well. So for example, for years I've been consuming content on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram in English. I watch most of the series and films in their original language, that is English again. Most of the time I read news and books in English too. Of course I do that in Russian, in my mother tongue too, but more often, whenever it's possible, I'm trying to expose myself to English more. Now, these days, I've been trying to do the same thing with French. The last time I checked, my French was about B2, and I noticed whenever I scroll the socials or I watch something, I lean towards English, or of course sometimes to Russian too. So what I've been trying to do lately is to push myself to consume the content in French too. So if you ask me, before I've never really been interested in French-speaking content, let's say. I've started following some French creators on YouTube and TikTok. Of course, in order to make it more enjoyable, I chose the spheres that I would be interested to listen to, like fashion, beauty, learning languages. Apart from that, I also love reading and listening to the news podcasts too. I would normally do that in English, but now I listen to some news podcasts in French too. Another micro habit that I have is searching for the information in the target languages. Most of the time, whenever I need to Google something, I do it in English now. Now, it's my habit. I would do it in English. If I don't find certain information, of course, I would check it in Russian too. For example, if I ask ChatGPT something, I would ask my questions in English too. I've already tried doing it in French too, and I found it a bit uncomfortable first, but with each time it's getting better and better. Another thing that I make sure I do is that I take advantage of idle tasks. Let's be honest, most of us are busy with different responsibilities and we can hardly find time to sit down and learn a certain language. So what I do is, whenever I commute, cook, do the chores, eat, I make sure that I listen or watch something in the target language. To be honest, I think we don't even have to push ourselves to do that. I'm pretty sure most of us have this background noise while doing something else. For example, most of us, I'm pretty sure, watch something while eating. What if instead of watching something in the mother tongue, switch to the language that you are learning? So for example, most of the time, it's been English for me. But now that I feel comfortable with the English, I try and push myself to either listen to French podcasts or watch some French vlogs. For example, I usually wake up early in the morning, and while doing makeup and preparing for my work, I often watch some French vlogs on YouTube. And first, it helps me to immerse in the language. Second, it helps me to wake up too, and it creates a feeling as if I'm preparing for my work together with someone else. What I also do is I take advantage of my commute, and while commuting to my work, I often listen now to French news podcasts too. Small actions like this can definitely make a difference in your language learning journey. Exposure is great, but will it help me to develop my speaking skills? Well, as I've said earlier, exposure helps you to expand your passive vocabulary. So it means that you'll be able to understand more, you will develop your listening skills. But when it comes to speaking, just exposing yourself to the language isn't really enough. So what do? I write down the words. Yes, as simple as this. And in order to stay on track with this habit, I'm trying to take all my notes, to write down all my new words in one place and keep it as accessible as possible. And what I use for that is Quizlet. If you don't know, Quizlet is an application where you can create flashcards with different words. It doesn't have to be Quizlet. There are so many different alternatives. One of them is Anki. So for one, I love Quizlet. Let's say I'm used to it, so I don't really mind it as long as I can use flashcards over there for free. I keep it organized. I've created 3 different folders there for English, Russian and Turkish, and inside these folders I create different sets. And you might think that I start learning this word right away as soon as I add these words into sets, but to be honest, not really. What I do is that while I'm consuming different content, and if I hear some interesting phrases and words or while studying maybe, what I do is I add these words into the sets. I wait till there are 30-40 words over there, and then I save them for the moments like commuting, waiting in line somewhere else, or for mindless scrolling. So when I find myself scrolling socials without any benefit, let's say, I remind myself to open the Quizlet and swipe through the flashcards. I also keep my Quizlet on my homepage again, not to forget about that. Now, memorizing is good, but again, the chances of you using the words after just swiping through the cards or memorizing the words are kind of low. So what I do next is that whenever I learn these words, I try to think of context where I could use this word, or I try and make some sentences using these words. I often try to relate to myself or to my life. I don't know how it works, but I feel like brain is more likely to remember the words if you relate to yourself or to your life. So that's pretty much it. If you're not sure how to use these words, make sure that together with definition or translation, you also add the example sentence from a dictionary, or you can ask ChatGPT to help you generate a sentence. And the last habit is speaking whenever possible. As an English teacher, I always remind my students that language is first of all about communication. Learning grammar rules, vocabulary, all of it is meaningless unless you use them in your speech. As for English, I've kind of been fortunate because I'm an English teacher, so it means that I get my regular dose of communication in the language with my students. And also after I moved to Turkey, my primary language of communication, either at home or at work, is English. So everything is pretty clear here. But what do we do if we don't have anyone to practice the language with? Well, that's the case with French for me. So I don't have any friends here who speak French. I don't have any native speakers around. I don't live in a French-speaking country. So what do? What I do is I turn to ChatGPT and I prompt it with something like, my French level is about B2. I want to practice my speaking with you. Keep the conversation going by asking me questions and correct me if I make any mistakes. I also sometimes ask ChatGPT to help me with vocabulary when I need it. So yeah, I've tried it a few times. I found it really helpful, especially if you don't have money or time for private classes, for tutors. And yeah, I just love this alternative. I do the same thing with Turkish. Yes, I do live and work in Turkey now. I have plenty of exposure, but sometimes I prefer to talk to ChatGPT because it can also correct you. It can also help you with the vocabulary, unlike your friends, for example, who might feel lazy to do that. And yeah, and it just works perfect. Another thing I do is that I think out loud, always speak to myself. I don't know about you, but I do love talking to myself sometimes. Most of the time, again, I do it either in my mother tongue or English, but now I notice that I started doing it sometimes in French and sometimes in Turkish too. It might sound ridiculous, but it is helpful. Just give it a try. To make it more fun, sometimes I create mini vlogs in the languages I am learning. For example, I've created a few reels or shorts, I guess, in Turkish. You can create podcasts, you can shoot a YouTube video. You don't have to publish all of the things, but I believe it could be more fun to do so. Another thing, definitely, whenever you are in the country of your target language, make sure that you practice it over there as much as you can, you know, while asking for information in the restaurant or anywhere else. I know it's a common problem. I know it's a common problem. Many people are afraid of making mistakes. But if you keep in mind that the language is first of all about the communication, that's the primary purpose, maybe it will help you to feel more comfortable over there. No one is judging you, you know, no one is giving you any marks for your language level. For example, my Turkish level is barely A2. But I never hesitate to speak Turkish in cafes, restaurants, whenever I ask for some information and I know the person doesn't know English. And I see their smiles on their faces. Yes, I do. But these are kind smiles. No one is judging me. I think on the contrary, they find it cute that you're trying to put some effort to speak their language. And remember, it's your second language. The fact that you're trying to learn another language and speak it is already admirable. So many people know just one language. So for that alone, I think you can be proud of yourself. But if you want to practice the language on your own and you still don't really feel comfortable with speaking, or you find it a bit intimidating, you can try journaling. And that's what I do. I love journaling, and I do it either in Russian or in English. Maybe I should try doing it in French too. So these are some of the language habits that helped me to make some progress. But if you're just starting learning the language, just like me with Turkish, these habits won't really bring any considerable and instant results. Especially at beginner levels, it's important to dedicate some time to grammar and vocabulary. It's important that you actually sit down and do some work. And I think only in this way, together with the language habits that I've mentioned, you can reach more considerable results. But if your level is higher and you don't have time to study thoroughly, then of course, something is better than nothing. Just never disregard the small things you can do for your language. So I guess that's it for today. I'm also interested to know which languages you're currently learning and which strategies work personally for you. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you soon.